Welcome to Midlife Matters. I'm Marie, and each week I'm joined by my friends Julie and Mindy to talk about all the topics keeping women in the middle years up at night. Today we're talking about fitness and healthy living with our guest Tanja Shaw. The needs of our bodies change as we get older. Join us as Tanja shares ways to make the most of our exercise and diet routines as we move into midlife. Let's get started. Hi, everyone. Hi, Mindy. Hi, Julie.
Hey, Marie.
Hi, everybody.
Today, we're going to be talking about fitness and healthy living in midlife. And Mindy and Julie, I know that you guys each have experienced your own personal journey. Would you let us know just a little summary of what you went through? Mindy, how about you start us off? Because I know that you have quite the story.
Sure. Well, I really went from 0 to 100 in my mid-30s, and I recorded an interview on this podcast about how I lost 60 pounds twice.
Mm-hmm.
And so really probably about 7 years ago, started that journey to lose that 60 pounds that second time. And I've been maintaining since. And so I've noticed hitting a new decade, hitting 40, that my body is changing again. And so I'm really excited today about our topic because I'm noticing I need to do some different things.
Yeah. That's just so amazing that you could lose 60 pounds twice. Listeners, if you have not heard Mindy's story, I'm going to link it in our show notes and you'll want to be sure and go back and listen to that. Julie, I know that you also have a personal journey of weight loss and fitness.
Yeah, I always enjoyed being active. I was always pretty athletic. But during those middle child rearing years, I just kind of let things go. And I never enjoyed formal exercise. Like I never had a gym membership or did anything like that. And then about 7 years ago, I really wanted to get in shape for my daughter's wedding. And so it was really motivated by how I looked. But shortly after I got into it and maintained my weight, I realized it was now more about how I felt. Like I love the way I feel. And I joke with my trainer that, you know, if budget gets tight or whatever, it will be the last thing that I cut out.
Mm-hmm. She has job security.
Yeah, I love it so much. So
Right. Well, listeners, as you know, we talk about all the topics keeping women in the middle years up at night. And one of those topics that women think about a lot is fitness and living a healthy lifestyle as we get older. And we wonder, do the same tricks and tips still apply? Are the things we've done for years still going to work? What if we've never done anything at all, but we feel like now is the time to start? And so we are bringing on a guest to answer all of our questions on this subject. Today, we're joined by Tanja Shaw, a fitness coach who helps midlife women who've been dieting most of their life to get to their happy, healthy weight without the obsession so that they can live their life. Tanja, welcome to Midlife Matters.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yes. And you know, I love in your tagline that you say that you help women get to their happy, healthy weight without the obsession. And I do think it's so easy for women to become obsessed about this topic.
Absolutely. You know, one thing, this is what we don't talk about, is just the mental real estate and the life energy it can take when we are either not happy in our bodies and we're constantly disappointing ourselves. We are always in our own head with this inner critic. We're always thinking about whether that food is going to be the right thing or whether we can stick with it or whether that's going to be fat or whether that's I'm going to lose weight or what if, all these things, what if I fail? And then sometimes also you stick to a diet for a while and then you still are in the same boat, just now at a smaller size. You're still obsessed with everything. You're still not good enough. You're still unhappy. You're still obsessing about everything. And really, when you look back at the end of your life, like this is what really spurred me on to make my own transformation is like, how do you want to remember your life? Granted, on your deathbed, you're not going to be like, oh, I'm so glad that I wasted so much of my life energy on whether or not I was 5 pounds up or 5 pounds down or always on this constant roller coaster ride. And it's exhausting. So there's another way. And that's what I've really come to do in my health and wellness journey and in my professional journey.
I find it so interesting. Why don't you tell us a little bit about how you got started, where you're from?
Thank you. So I live in Chilliwack, British Columbia. So any Canadians or British Columbians, I live in Chilliwack, which is an hour east of Vancouver. And I started like, most people, because I love sports. I love being active. I loved how it made me feel. did my degree in kinesiology. And shortly after that, I started working with men and women on their health and their wellness as a personal trainer and as a kinesiologist at a physiotherapy clinic. And as I developed and grew my business, I have a studio here in Chilliwack as well. I worked with men and women for years, and I always thought that the answer to their problems was a stricter diet plan and go low carb or whatever fad was happening right now. I mean, back in the day, it was like fat free, now it's carb free. It's all changing. Mm-hmm. And, really intense workouts, and they got results. Like they actually, they lost the weight, they felt great, but they were never able to sustain it. Mm-hmm. And I realized that there was something really missing in how we're doing things. There's a big gap in the health and fitness industry and the diet industry. And I also was struggling with my own disordered eating around that same time. So here I am as a health and wellness coach, and sure, I looked the part, but I was really struggling inside. And as you get to know your clients really personally, then you recognize they're going through some pretty big things. And the answer is not the diet plan. The answer is something they don't know that broccoli is good for you and chicken is good for you or beans are good for you or the glass of wine, the chips at nighttime is not the healthiest thing. They know all that stuff, but there's deeper things that are going on. So I really wanted to fill that gap. And in 2015, I really was more intentional on creating programs and coaching programs to fill that gap. And that's what I've been doing ever since. It's evolved a lot. I've learned a lot. And it's been such an incredible and rewarding journey.
Yes, I'm sure it has been. And it's so relevant because we see this topic everywhere. Like we can't turn on the TV. We can't pick up a magazine. We can't even buy our groceries without passing things in the checkout aisle promising lose weight or, do this fitness plan. And it's just everywhere. And today we really want to explore how fitness and health needs change in midlife and what we should be thinking of doing now. Because if we're honest, all of us have been thinking about this for years, but now our bodies are changing and we do need to be doing things differently.
100%. And the first thing I want to just come at this is this energetic sort of shift in our perspective that your body is going to change. And that your body is also doing the best she can for you. Sometimes we get so upset when we're especially women around menopause, a lot of women gain weight. A lot of women gain weight around the midsection. There is an actual biological reason that she's doing that. And it's not because she hates you. She's it's because she's trying to keep you alive. She's trying to do the best she can for you. And when you come at all of what we're going to talk about today from that perspective of actually wanting to take care of yourself and having a good relationship with your body and knowing that she is trying the best she can for you, you're going to come at this from a very different space. So you're going to start to really appreciate your body and start to learn to work with your body versus always fighting yourself. Because when you fight yourself, you are going to lose.
Yeah, that's such a great point about not fighting ourselves because I don't want to get older. I don't want to see my body changing. I mean, I want to get older. Obviously, the alternative is death. So I do want to get older, but I think that we don't like the changes. What other changes are going on that we may not be liking?
Oh, there is a lot. And to speak to that point about the social media and everything, one of the best things you can do to embrace these changes is just surround yourself with other role models who are embracing their aging process. And there are Facebook groups out there, a lot of 50 plus, 60 plus Facebook groups, 40 plus Facebook groups who are just really embracing midlife. And so that we're not just comparing ourselves to the 20-year-old on Cosmo or Women's Health or whatever. And that's our basis of comparison. So yeah, your body changes. I mean, one of the biggest things that happens is the hormonal changes because hormones run the show in your body. And most women who listen to this podcast are going to already, whether you're 30 or 40 or 50 or wherever you are, you're going to already recognize that some things have shifted. There's so many repercussions of hormonal changes that are natural and normal, and it's the part of the process. And we can do a lot to make sure that we thrive and we have energy and we're taking good care of ourselves as these changes happen. The one that I see the most and women ask me the most is about the midsection weight gain. And that is very much linked to hormones. So not to say it's inevitable, not to say you can't do anything about it, but that is one hormonal change that can sometimes come up. Just your recovery needs change. So you're not going to be able to just do the things you used to do when you were 20 and get away with it. You need to really start to take care of your body and also start to think about taking care of your body for more longevity.
Mm-hmm.
When you're younger, especially if you're working out a lot, you could you could run, you could do all the things and just sort of get away with it. But now you really got to take care of your body and look at the whole balance of wellness so that she can thrive into her 50s and 60s and 70s and 80s and beyond, because our bodies, we're living longer and longer. We want this body to last. So coming at from that perspective can be really powerful and helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Right. That's something my trainer reminds me of a lot now that I have a grandchild. He's one, that by staying fit, flexible, and healthy, I'm preparing for time with him. I can sit in the floor and then still be able to get up. I can pick him up from a seated position, because I look at older people and think that can't do those things. And I just think I want to be determined to, as best I can to prepare for that and not be so limited.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. It's actually amazing how many women struggle and men struggle with getting up and down off the floor. Like it's one of those things that we don't talk about. There's no it's not on the front cover of the magazines that you're seeing hey, it's all about the weight loss and the shredded abs and stuff. But that is one, and that's a real thing. That's a real thing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, as we get older, what are some habits that we need to adopt, or maybe habits that we need to get rid of to kind of get the most out of our diet and exercise?
Great question. And the one thing I love about this question is that you're focusing on the habits. And I think this is the key to to actually sticking with it is our identity about who we are. So for example, if you're quitting smoking, you're not quitting smoking, you're a non-smoker, that identity shift.
Mm.
But then also the habits as well. It's just what you do. There's so many we can talk about, like whether it could be water, it could be balancing your blood sugar levels, it could be drinking more water and less wine, it could be moving your body regularly, managing stress. There's so many habits that you can think about. But the biggest thing when it comes to building habits is to start with where you're at and to choose consistency over intensity. So often we want to do all the things and we want to overhaul everything because we feel stressed, or we want to just get rid of the weight right away, or we want to do all the things and start strength training and start cardio and start clean eating and ditch this and ditch that. We don't stick with it because we always say life happens, or COVID-19 happens, or something happens. I don't know, pandemic. And we can't stick with it. So the biggest thing when you're going through this is to really allow yourself to start small and build consistency first. And your brain is going to tell you that it's not enough, that you could be doing more, but building the habits is, and really being intentional with those habits is important. The other big ones and we'll get to this a little bit more, but women in midlife, this goes to all ages, but blood sugar regulation and managing stress are probably the two ones that I see that can be the most impactful when it comes to just your health, your energy, and how your body functions. Those are the two that we can kind of touch on a little bit too. But I know, and there's lots of habits that you can create, under those umbrellas, but those are two areas to really focus on.
And I love hearing all of this, and I can't wait to delve into it more. But you mentioned longevity, and I would love to talk about actual activity that we do, exercise that we do. I've had so many conversations about this topic recently with friends. So I'm just curious, Tanja, is every form of exercise healthy for our bodies?
So the short answer is no, because there's so much bio-individual differences. And what is going to work for one person is not going to work for another person, which is why it's really good to start to listen to yourself and to see what feels good for you. There's also, you have to look at the actual human body in terms of injuries. And so, for example, if there are things that are going on that are not great, like shoulder injuries, you don't want to do a whole bunch of push-ups or shoulder presses, that sort of thing.
Right.
And the other one that comes up a lot here when it comes to exercise and fitness, make sure that you're enjoying it too, or at least try not to hate it.
Amen, sister.
You're not going to love everything, but when you do things that you at least don't despise, it can be really helpful as well. But the other one, again, when it comes to exercise, we're so used to always think about calories in, calories out. Going for this really intense run or a hike or a long bike ride is going to burn more calories on my Apple Watch or my Fitbit. And we got to think about, when it comes to exercise, about hormones and the hormonal response from exercises, because the one thing about is every form of exercise healthy for all of our bodies? The one thing I see sometimes is that when we overdo things or we don't balance it with recovery, it puts the body into a bit of a stress state. And that is such a huge cause of hormonal imbalances and belly weight gain, like weight gain around the midsection through menopause, is just the stress response. So we have to make sure that we manage that within our life. If you're already a go, 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 go type person, and you're like, I'm not stressed, but you're kind of twitching, or you're like multitasking all the time, or running from here to here and rushing everywhere, and you say, I thrive in stress, maybe you do, but your body doesn't. And taking time to unwind, like even though the yoga might not be as like calorie burning on your Apple Watch, it's also really important for your body. So there's lots of by individual differences, which is why it is great to work with someone to create that for you and to work with on that as well.
Wow, I love this.
A good reminder.
Yes, absolutely. Well, and it's so funny that you just mentioned yoga, because I despised it in my 20s. I tried it. I'm like, no, that's not for me. I'm a sports girl. And then now recently I'm like, oh, I really need to do that, because I feel so much better doing it. And so I do want to ask you, are there certain forms of exercise that are kind of better for our overall health, especially in midlife?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to give you some umbrella things, but then you can dive into like the specific ones that you like yourself, because there's lots of options. Yoga, you mentioned mobility, and you mentioned there, like getting up and down off the floor. This is huge. And that's one thing that we overlook when it comes to just overall wellness, is our ability to move. If you look at kids, and so because mobility and balance are two that need to be more intentional. I have an 11-year-old, he's going to be 11 in 2 weeks. I have a son, and we go for a walk. We walk to school every day. You know, if there's some rocks, he'll be jumping on the rocks, and he'll be balancing across the little poles. And he does all those things. So kids do it naturally. Adults don't. We're kind of boring. We just like sit down, we walk in a straight line. we don't go do the balance exercises. So we don't use it, and it declines. So mobility and balance is a big part. I love what you said about yoga. You don't have to do a ton of it, but daily mobility, daily balance exercises is amazing. I have a personal habit to stretch at least 5 minutes a day. And it doesn't seem like a lot, but 5 minutes of yoga, 10 minutes is my September challenge. It makes such a big difference in how your body functions and feels. The other one is strength training. And this one, again, if you only measure calories in and calories out, your Apple Watch isn't going to tell you that you burn a ton of calories when you strength train. But again, it comes down to hormones and the hormonal response. It comes down to just being able to function pretty well. When it comes to metabolism, strength training and building muscle mass is so important. So many women struggle with like their metabolism drops in their 40s. And it's not inevitable. A big reason why it does is because our muscle mass starts to decline. And strength training is a great way to maintain that. Not only that, but when you think about longevity, you want to be able to walk up and down the stairs and carry your groceries and open the pickle jar and do all those things. And it feels good to be strong. So strength is going to be really important for bones, for joints, for all of that. And then I'm going to put it last, but this is where we usually start, is cardio. You know, we often just start by doing all the cardio training, and cardio is lovely. But even things like walking, like it doesn't have to be super intense. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to run. You don't have to do anything, depending what your body, like how your body works and what your stress levels are like, is going to vary a little bit for cardio. If you are doing more higher intensity stuff, make sure you have lots of recovery, because our bodies are not meant to just do like high intensity exercise all the time. So strength, balance it all out over the week. If I could recommend strength training 2 to 3 times a week, mobility balance would be daily. And then cardio, if you're being more intentional with cardio, maybe a couple times a week, but then just moving your body like as much as you can over the day. Not necessarily about like, again, this is not just about burning calories. One of the best things you can do when it comes to cultivating a really healthy relationship with exercise, and this was mentioned already, is focusing on how it makes you feel, and also breaking the ties between exercise and weight loss, so that, because it doesn't work. I mean, unless very rarely works. For most people, it doesn't work at all. but recognizing that exercise is for your energy, it's for your mobility, it's for being strong and how you feel in a day. And if weight loss is a goal, then that comes down to generally other components of our lifestyle that we need to address.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm loving so much of what you're saying because number one, if I don't like running, I don't have to run.
Amen.
Because I hate running. And just the whole the shift in your mindset, or in my mindset, of seeing all of this as working with your body, not fighting it. And I'll admit that that's kind of how I saw it. Like I'm fighting back aging instead of working with my body. Like even just gentle things that you do are helpful. To keep you more flexible, to keep you moving. And I just like that, thinking of being kind to your body and helping it out, and not always feeling like you're not doing enough.
Oh, that's huge. And that's your brain just telling you that. Like those thoughts are going to come. They're always going to come, but you got to just sort of like, no, I'm not thinking that right now. That's just a thought. And then move on. Because absolutely, I mean, even things like, this is why we struggle with diet and exercise so much, because we think that we need to do rather all or nothing when it comes to our diet and our exercise. And we think we have to do it all, or it doesn't count unless I can walk for 30 minutes or an hour, or it doesn't count unless I do this. But take that all or something approach when it comes to longevity and thinking about, like you said, like working with your body and what does your body need, and every little bit matters.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned something a few minutes back about stretching, and that's something that I know I have some lower back pain, and my trainer said that that's often related to tight hamstrings, and she encourages me to stretch. But I do hear, I get a little confused about stretching, like when should you do it, and is there a right or wrong way to do it?
It's funny how confusing this can be, because you're going to hear like stretching is the most important thing, and then no one should stretch.
Right.
I think of it more as mobility, so versus just the stretching. And mobility is moving your body through the full range of motion, so that you can move freely. So you're absolutely right that a lot of times back issues, hamstrings can be part of it. Quite often it's also the front, like weak core, and then also a lot of hip flexor flexibility. So the front of the hips can be quite tight, especially if we're sitting for long periods of time. When you're starting a workout, way before you work out, think about more dynamic mobility. So moving through the full range of motion. I start my strength workouts, for example, with like more of a flow yoga pattern. So I'm just like really opening things up. Stretching can be very individual. So if you have specific areas of your body that is actually needing to be lengthened, hamstrings are one of those ones that sometimes they feel tight, but not because they're actually tight. It's because your pelvis is tipped the wrong way and they're just being like stretched that way. So you actually just need to work on some core strength and also shifting the way the pelvis is. So for that reason, and sometimes having an assessment, even like one with a physiotherapy or a kinesiologist or someone to look at your body can be really helpful. But generally, we want to do some mobility before we do anything intense. Like don't get up in the morning and just start running right away, because your body's not going to like you very much. Do something to move yourself through. It can be dynamic. It could be walking lunges with an arm raise. It could be trunk rotations. Those kind of things are really important. And then the other mobility, which would be like more of the static stretching, that is generally done, if it's done, is after your workout. And that one still is going to be, or honestly, even just throughout the day, just stretching your chest, and it feels so good. I just recommend just move through the full range of motion as much as you can.
Okay. Well, we've talked a lot about exercise and how it relates to our physical health, but what about how it's related to mental health and well-being?
Oh, it absolutely is. And this is probably the number one reason why the women and men I see at the studio work out is for men, like, because we got things going on in our life and we need the energy. Like our state, our physiology is our energy. And it's also one of the most immediate results that you're going to have from a workout. You may not notice like your biceps are going to get bigger right away, or if you have a weight loss goal, or the things don't change right away, but how you feel is going to change immediately.
That's true. Yeah.
It's incredible. It's incredible. That's huge for kids as well. If you have kids, teenagers, fitness and movement is so, so critical for their brains as well, for their focus, for their just ability to pay attention in school. They've done some studies of kids who did a pretty intense workout before school, and really how much that impacted their performance in school. So it's huge for sleep, for blood flow, for it's for creativity, for productivity, for the things we got to do in life. Exercise and movement is so important for our mental well-being.
So true. I have really felt the benefits of that, and that's what has kept me motivated.
I say the joke in class is my family really needs me to be here right now so that I can deal with everything when I go back home.
Isn't that true?
I notice a lot of times, I just don't feel like working out. But the thing that gets me there is maybe I have to take my kids to school and I'm going to pass the Y on the way home. And I don't feel like going in there, but I'm so glad afterwards that I did. So there is just a really big mental boost. Sometimes it's just a matter of actually putting the workout clothes on and taking one step just for help us get to that point. But in addition to mental benefits of exercise, let's talk a little bit about the nutritional aspects of fitness, because I do know that that is something that we hear. I often hear that how we eat is even more important than how we exercise. So how do our food choices affect our aging process?
Yeah, it really does. And the two big things in terms of actually what to do, or the biggest one I would say, is blood sugar regulation. So we talk often about calories in, calories out, and then we were like, okay, is it calories? Is it hormones? And it's really about both. But managing your blood sugar levels so that you have an adequate amount of protein, fats, and fiber when you eat goes such a long way for hormonal balance. Like working on your hormones and working on hormone therapy and everything or whatever you're doing to do that can be important, but it's so futile unless your blood sugar levels are balanced, because you're still just fighting this uphill battle. And we talked a lot about how we feel in this podcast, which I love, because we're all after a feeling. We want to feel good. We want to feel energized. We want to feel confident. We want to feel strong. And blood sugar regulation is one of those things that once you get it and your blood sugar levels are stable, you have so much more energy and you don't have the cravings as much. And you just feel so much better, more clear, like your mind is clearer. Everything improves throughout the day.
Okay. I always think of blood sugar levels when I think of a diabetic. So, but you're obviously not necessarily talking about that. So how do you regulate your blood sugar levels if you're not checking it? What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. And you don't need to check it. Most people can feel it and just know that blood sugar levels are going to go up and down. That's a natural process in our body. We have these amazing hormones called insulin and glucagon, unless you don't, which is you're then a type 1 diabetic and you're taking insulin. And we have this amazing way to keep our blood sugar levels stable. What happens though is that when we eat, our blood sugar levels are going to go up. And this is a natural process. The pancreas releases insulin, which is going to take all of that blood sugar and it's going to now store it either it stores it in the liver, it stores it in muscle, and then excess, it stores it as body fat, as adipose tissue. And then the blood sugar levels drop back down again. And then you have other hormones, glucagon, to bring the blood sugar levels back up again. This is all natural and normal. What happens though is that we're supposed to keep this little, go up and down within this nice little narrow bandwidth. Mm-hmm. But in our society, because of stress, because of lots of processed foods, blood sugar levels goes a lot higher and the body doesn't know. So the body just says, okay, we're having a lot of blood sugar right now. And the pancreas says hey, let's get this back down again. So it releases a lot of insulin and it overshoots. So now blood sugar levels go back down again. And what happens when it goes back down again is our body, if you think about back in the day, back in caveman days, dropping your blood sugar levels is not a good thing. We never had an issue with high blood sugar levels until modern day society. It was always low. Low is where there's no food around, we're in a famine area. So now you have both glucagon, which is that one hormone to bring it up, but you also have a secondary source of bringing the blood sugar levels back up. And that is your adrenal glands. the ones that are going to be there for stress response. And they also are going to release hormones to bring blood sugar levels back up again. So every time your blood sugar levels drop quite down low, then it creates a stress response in the body. And we know how we feel. We feel all like panicky, jittery. We don't feel good. So those are good indications that your blood sugar levels is going up, down. If you feel like you need to eat every 2 to 3 hours, otherwise you're going to be hangry or someone's going to be really, we joke about it, but it is because we've all been there. It's common, but it's not normal. Like it's not supposed to be that way. And if you do notice things like that, if you get really really need to eat when it's been a while, then that's a good indication that your blood sugar level is out of balance. So really good question. You don't have to get tested, but you'll know how you feel. Inability to lose weight sometimes is one where you're just really struggling. Energy dips, big sugar cravings, coffee cravings, need that pick me up all the time. Those are good indications that your blood sugar levels are out of balance. And it becomes a lot easier just to eat normally too when you don't struggle with that extra up and down. Mm-hmm. And when your blood sugar levels drop, the first thing that you want is like, I need carbs and sugar like right now because you want that quick energy. But it's actually the exact opposite of what you do want because that's just going to bring it back up again and then the roller coaster continues. Yeah. So that's why having the balance of the proteins, the fiber, the fat all slows that process down so that curve becomes more where it's supposed to be.
Okay, thanks.
So piggybacking off of that, I would love to hear your thoughts on, are there certain food rules, in air quotes, are there certain food rules that you would recommend a midlife woman to follow? Because there's so many different ideologies out there that we hear.
Oh, totally. Oh my gosh. It's overwhelming. Like a lot of women I work with are just so overwhelmed because they've done so many things before. And one day something's good for you, then it's bad for you. And it's exhausting. They don't know where to start. Mm-hmm. So there are, but I want to just preface it by saying that how you eat matters almost more than what you eat. So think about more also your relationship with food. Mm-hmm. And are you eating to cope with stress, or are you eating to sabotage yourself because you don't believe you're worthy of, feeling good, or the weight loss? All these things can come up that are the bigger reasons why we are stuck with our diet, while we're stuck with this on again, off again so often. So what you eat matters. How you eat and your relationship with food also really matters. And they both go hand in hand, and we can both also work on them together. But the biggest thing when it comes to like food rules, if I could simplify it, and it's so simple, like eat when you're physically hungry and stop when you're satiated. Mm-hmm. Like it's as simple as that. And I know it's simple, but not easy because we're stressed and we're bored and we're tired and we're lonely and we're happy and we're sad. And we are told, that we shouldn't feel certain ways, and food tastes good, and we have sometimes lives where we're busy and we just want that little pleasure at nighttime. Mm-hmm. I get it. But really, from a health perspective and a relationship with yourself perspective, for the most part, eat when you're physically hungry and stop when you're satiated, because food is the answer when hunger is the problem. This is the work I do. It's I understand it's easier said than done.
Yeah, I know that sounds easy, but when I started to do that, I realized that in modern days, we don't even realize what hunger feels like because we don't let ourselves really get hungry,
Totally. And a lot of women are so out of tune with their body. Identify what hunger feels like and how it feels like for you, and what satiation feels like for you. Mm-hmm. Because we are often so out of tune because we're following these external diet plans, just blindly following the food plans and do this and do that we are just not listening to her. And she'll tell you what she needs when we slow down and listen. Mm-hmm. So the caveat to that when we also need to eat more whole foods. This is so simple, I know. And yes, there's a bit of prep work that goes into it. Sometimes we want to do all the quick, easy things, and you can simplify and you can make things a lot quicker for sure. But recognize the time that you put into preparing whole foods is not just a time cost. It's an investment in your health and your energy, and that there's a payoff as well. That's a really important, perspective to have. This is a continuum, and we're not going to be, perfect. There is no perfect eating. I still have Oreos and chocolate milk sometimes and all the things, but it's a continuum, and start with where you're at and see if you can make some swaps to improve yourself as well. So eating when you're hungry, listen to your body's hunger and satiety signals, eating more whole foods. And then the next one is eating to balance your blood sugar levels. So some fat, some protein, lots of fiber, less like processed food that's going to spike or your blood sugar levels. If you could do that, holy smokes, like that's a huge, we're doing pretty good there.
Yeah.
So how is this different, Tanja, than from when we were in our 20s? Because you said earlier with exercise not to look back and think, how I used to be or what I used to do. Well, how does this like nutrition mindset look different now?
So ideally, this is how we would be eating in our 20s as well, and our teens, and our 10s. Lots of vegetables, whole foods, listening to your hunger and satiety signals, which as parents, especially of young kids, you can do so much to help foster, especially listening to their body and seeing when they're hungry. Such a good habit to help with. But the thing is this is where in my coaching, I don't prescribe diets. I teach women how to listen to their own body. And when you do that, you're going to notice that things are going to move in seasons. And really in seasons too, like fall is going to be different than summer, is going to be different than winter. Like we have different food cravings, we have different rhythms as well. And same thing as you go through your years and your decades, that there are going to be different seasons of life where your eating style is going to be a little bit different. I would still focus on those kind of main principles, but you can also, maybe there's going to be a season where you're going to just eat more plant-based and that's going to feel really good in your body for that time. And maybe that's the next year, you're going to need more meat. Like things change, but when you can start to just really shut off all of the external noise and start to listen to her, she's going to really tell you a lot. And then there are some vitamins and minerals that are important too through menopause. I actually did a podcast interview a little while ago with another lady from her podcast is the Happy Menopause. It's great. But she highlighted a couple of nutrients like magnesium, all the B vitamins, vitamin C. That's really important. So sometimes there's some nutrition that's going to be more important. But still, like now, balancing your blood sugar levels, eating for satiety, you're going to need less food than you did in your 20s. Like, unfortunately, unless you were like totally sedentary there, very active now. So things change. But the biggest thing is to go with your bodies, like follow these guidelines.
I'm kind of laughing when I hear you say about seasons changing, because do you run into people? I mean, I know I'm not the only one, but maybe I'm rarity. I literally eat about the same, I literally eat the same breakfast every single day of my life. Just about. And then very similar lunches every single, I don't see a lot of variety. I mean, maybe in the winter I'll switch up to more like chilies and soups, and in the summer do more grilling out. But as far as breakfast and lunch, I eat pretty much the same thing every day. Is that normal? Is that good? Should I be doing something different?
I think everyone's different in there. I have some clients who just want to simplify, and we tend to be better with routines at breakfast and lunch. If you have the same dinner every day, you'd be like, oh my gosh, I don't know why, but for whatever reason, we can do that. True. But dinners cannot be the same every night. Otherwise we go stir crazy. But yeah, I think what happens quite often is that just seasonally, if you think about where you live in the world and what's available that time of year, those things are going to be different. So in the summertime, now we do have access to, whatever. You can have, I think, watermelon all year round if you want to, and strawberries. Right. You're not supposed to, it's not, but we can. So we do have more availabilities, but generally we tend to want more warmer things in the wintertime. We tend to sometimes eat even more root vegetables and things like that. And then in the summertime, it's a lot more grilling. It's a lot more above the ground things. It's often lighter, cooler meals as well. So things like that. And there are different perspectives. And some people can eat the same thing most days of the week or have this weekly rotation. And some people would drive them nuts. So it's
okay. But it's not like doing anything as far as your fitness or your weight loss. It's just the way you are.
Yes, it's the way you are. You want to make sure you get if you think about your actual vegetables and the green stuff and have different colors in there. But it's actually, some people do really well with the routines because it takes out all of the decision making. Right. So they say this one works for me. And then maybe one day you'll just go to your, whatever you have for breakfast, oatmeal, and you might go and you'll be like, there is no way I can eat it today. And maybe that's the end of that season and you'll do, I don't know, or not. Who knows?
Yeah. Why do you think that so many women do struggle with their diet? Because I think we're always struggling. We're either trying a new one, we're telling people that we're on a diet, we're falling off the diet. Like, why are we always in limbo here?
Yeah, and this is what this is the real work that I do here is getting off this cycle because we struggle in so many ways. And the biggest thing, that you're not alone and that your body really is trying to do the best you can for you. Sometimes we feel so frustrated with ourselves, but your body is really like, even the self-sabotage sometimes it's not because she's like actually wants to sabotage yourself. It's because there's something else going on that we need to address. We have all of these diet mindsets, like the all or nothing. We're often perfectionists. We have these expectations that we should be a certain way, that we should look a certain way. And you cannot solve compulsive eating with compulsive dieting. And quite often we go to solve our diet issues and our food issues and our food struggles by going on a diet when food was never the issue. Unless you really don't know that broccoli is good for you and that, eating a whole row of Oreo cookies is not, then a diet plan isn't going to fix the real reason why we're struggling, which is usually emotion. Like, there's an emotional response. It's about learning to feel our emotions. It's about our identity of ourselves, how we're talking to ourselves, our self-worth. Like, all of these things are the bigger reasons why so many women struggle. And until you start to really and some women they've just have never focused on their diet ever, and they decide to eat healthy, then bam, they're done. But if you're going through this cycle over and over again or struggle, there's something else going on. You do it simultaneously. You can improve your eating habits while you're working on your identity of yourself, and they can definitely lend to each other. But it's like most diets. We talked about being eating when you're hungry and stopping when you're satiated. Diet plans are also going to take you away from just listening to your inner wisdom. It's just not solving the actual problem. Right. And so we just keep coming up against this wall.
Yeah. I always think, wouldn't it be nice if eating were just fuel for your body? Like, that it wasn't an emotional and a social thing. Like, if it could just be like, oh, it's time to put this in my body and get my nutrition, it would be so much simpler. But unfortunately.
And yet when we try those kind of diets, we don't like them. Most people that try I'll have this shake every day at lunch, because that's really literally all it's going to be is fuel. We don't like it though, really,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because food is also, it is social, and it is a part of our culture, and so it should be. It is something that we celebrate around, and it is something that even pleasure. Food is such an amazing source of pleasure, and yet we talk about food, we want food, and so often when we're eating food, we're not paying attention. Maybe we're guilty, we're multitasking, we're just shoveling food in our face while we're doing something else. So we're not even cultivating a great relationship. Food is, unless you're that kind of person who really would love to have a pill and then just get on with the day. That's not me. I like food. It's a lovely part of my day, but we don't even allow ourselves to feel pleasure around it. And then we wonder why we keep wanting more too. So there's lots of things. And this is what I said at the beginning, that how you eat is also so important, not just what you're eating.
Mm-hmm.
Well, as we wrap things up here, what would you say to the woman who says, I just hate going to the gym, or I don't have time, or I feel guilty taking time away from my family, or I'm just too out of shape to go to the gym? Well, many women feel defeated in their mind before they ever start. So what advice do you have for them?
Most of the work I do is about shifting our way of thinking. Because mindset and your beliefs and your thoughts is the number one thing that's going to affect the results in your life, whether it's business, whether it's your relationships, whether it is your career, whether it is your relationship with your kids, whether it is your health and your fitness. For example, we said that I don't have time, or I feel guilty taking away from my family. Guilt is the one that, women, we feel it's all so much. I know, we're just born, I should feel guilty for everything. Mm-hmm. But guilt is a feeling based on a thought. So thoughts create our feelings, our beliefs create our feelings. And the best gift I can give you that's going to change your life, if you start applying it, is to just recognize that your thoughts are not necessarily truths. That's a thought that says, I should be spending all my time with my kids or my family. It's not okay to take care of myself. It's selfish to take care of myself. These are the thoughts that get in the way. I should be doing something else. I shouldn't need this time to myself. These are belief systems. These are thoughts. They are not truths. Start by being aware of those thoughts. Then you can start to shift them. And as soon as you start to become aware of your thoughts and say things like, oh, and that's just a thought, it's going to just neutralize everything. And all of a sudden your brain's going to be like, wait a second, that's just a thought. Like, that's not real. Mm-hmm. But we take our thoughts and then we feel them and then we act on them, and that makes them real. Mm-hmm. Just like if you're going to bed at nighttime and you have a nightmare and you're waking up and your sheets are wet and you're sweating and your heart's pounding, and then you tell your husband or your kids what your nightmare was and they laugh at you because it's like, that's not real. Mm-hmm. It's the same sort of thing with your thoughts. They just feel so real because we internalize them. But your thoughts are not necessarily your truths, and we can start to break down which one is stopping you and then start to challenge that. And that might have been your story. That might have been your truth that got you to where you are now, but that's not going to be the truth that's going to move you forward.
That's a good word.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I remember, Mindy, when you were talking about your story, you said that one of the things that kind of held you back was just being intimidated to go to the gym.
Yes.
Or, maybe just that those kinds of things, sometimes it's hard to try new things. Like we're talking about yoga or, Pilates or different things that you've never tried before. Like I've never tried yoga and I feel super intimidated to even go into a class.
Right.
Like surely I would just be a laughingstock because I've seen these yoga moves on TV and they look very complicated and they have weird names. I won't know how to do the poses. Like I think we can just have not only thoughts about should I even take the time, but just am I even competent to do this stuff?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's why it's good to get really clear on what's actually holding you back. Because quite often we delay things. Like we say, oh, now's not the right time. We say this all the time. Things will be better when, or let me think it over. And it's like your brain trying to keep you safe because she doesn't want you to go and make a fool out of yourself and be judged and be criticized out there. But when you can get clear on the actual thing that's holding you back. So for example, in this case, you're saying, okay, I don't know the moves. You can start to challenge all of those. And maybe there's even a workaround, like maybe so that you build up confidence. If that's something you want to do, you're going to do some intro videos at home on YouTube. Like there is a plethora of amazing YouTuber yogis out there. My favorite is Yoga with Adriene, and she's like lovely and explains everything. So maybe that's your next step. So it's just really important to, I think I did a podcast a little bit while ago about solving problems, but just really getting clear about what the real problem is. And if we can just strip it down without all the emotion and all the drama that we layer on, then we can start to solve that.
Right.
It's funny that these same principles, I feel like we talk about pretty often on Midlife Matters, but it applies to all of life, not just exercise.
Totally. It applies to everything. It's the way we think. It absolutely applies to all of the arenas in your life, which makes it so practical to put the work in to practice these things, because it's going to impact all areas of your life.
Right.
Absolutely.
And if worse comes to worse, grab a friend who also doesn't know yoga.
That's
and drag her.
That's what I was going to say. Meet a friend.
Yeah, get some accountability. Well, this has been so helpful, Tanja. It just really is great to hear about the different things that we can be doing in midlife to stay healthy, to have longevity all through the years, like you were saying, because we do look ahead at the decades and we want to be able to move and do the things that we are fortunate enough to have the ability to do. So thanks so much for coming on today. Can you tell listeners where they can find out more about you and your coaching?
Yeah, thank you. The best way to learn more, to hear more, is if you're a podcast listener, which I know you are, is I do have a podcast. It's been 5 years now. It's called The Fit and Vibrant You. And I have a weekly show, sometimes a couple bonus episodes. And I find the podcast is the best way to get to know me. It's kind of like dating without having to go get married right away, to see if my message resonates with you. And I have so many women who listen to the podcast, and I don't work with them in the coaching, but they get so much out of it, such amazing results. They email me. It's so cool to hear. So that is the best way, the Fit and Vibrant You podcast.
Oh, I just want to thank you for coming on.
Yes.
I learned so much. You were really encouraging with all that you had to say.
Well, thank you.
Me too, Tanya. Thank you. Like, this is a conversation that happens so often. And I just appreciate how practical and real you have been. So thank you so much.
All right. Well, listeners, be sure and go and find Tanya. Be sure and check out her podcast, Fit and Vibrant You. Be sure and follow us on Midlife Matters Podcast on Instagram. You can also email us at midlifematterspodcast@gmail.com. Tanya, Mindy, and Julie, thanks so much for talking today.
This has been so fun. Thanks, girls.
All right. We'll talk to you next week. We're so happy you joined us today. You can find the show notes for this episode at midlifematterspodcast.com. Also, please tell a friend about the show and help them hit the free subscribe button on their favorite podcast app. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at Midlife Matters Podcast. That's where we post pictures and stories about all the things we talk about in each episode. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.